Hello everyone and welcome to my DCS Warbirds update for April 2020. During this month we saw a fairly substantial update to the WW2 Assets pack for the open beta. I want to dedicate most of the video to those updates, but before we get around to that, let's go through some of the other bits and pieces that have come up during the month of April. For the first piece of content, I want to talk about the damage model. On the ED forums, the damage model thread is one of the busiest of the WW2 threads, and on the 24th of April, Glowing Amram, who's working on some of the effects for the damage model, posted a couple of little animated GIF files which show some of the work in progress of the damage model effects. The smoke coming out of the aircraft itself is not part of the new effects pack, so try to ignore the smoke if you can. But we see some really nice impacts from the bullets that are being fired, both on the aircraft that is being shot at, the Focke-Wulf, and also on the right-hand side on the building that's being attacked. When I very first saw these GIFs posted, I actually thought they were just someone referencing some real-life footage, such is their quality. It is worth keeping a little eye on that damage model thread on the forums, because occasionally guys like Nineline will also jump on and just post little bits of feedback to the player base when questions are asked about the DM. We don't really have any substantial information though circling around yet, and your guess is as good as mine about when this will be released and what it will look like. So for the meantime, it's just eyes on the forum and fingers crossed. A couple of videos were produced by Eagle Dynamics during the month, which they published on their YouTube channel. And often these general advertising videos contain little snippets of the World War II aircraft, and in particular, the aircraft that had yet to be released. We saw some shots of both the Mosquito and the P-47 during the month, as well as some of the upcoming channel map. In particular, along the channel map, we saw WAGs flying along in a P-47 next to what I believe is Manston Airfield. You'll notice from this image that the runway is the concrete strip at Manston, which is quite wide, about 250 meters wide and 3 kilometers long. Now, this strip wasn't completed until just before D-Day. So if I'm right that that is Manston with the massive concrete strip, that will date the channel map to about May 1944. So it is pretty much the same date as the Normandy map. I was really hoping that the channel map would be much earlier in the war, say 1941, 1942, but this large concrete strip at Manston appears to place the map at mid-1944. We also now know from a comment on Discord that the Channel and Normandy maps will not be stitched together to form a single map, which seems even more odd given the timescale that we can now place the channel map on. For a couple of weeks in the middle of April, there was a bit of a flurry of activity on the forums from senior Eagle Dynamics staff, and in particular, Kate Peradierko posted a couple of updates to the overall DCS World roadmap. In those updates, we have identified a few World War II relevant items, so we're just going to run through a few of those now. Let's take a look at what we know then about the key World War II items. Looking at the top sort of rows, there are a couple of items which are listed as near term, and that is the damage modeling and the special effects update, which is pretty consistent with what we are seeing on the forums as well. Then there are a couple of items which have got specific dates or date windows identified next to them. The April Assets pack update, which we've now received and which we'll be talking about shortly. And then the P-47 here is scheduled for release in Q2 this year. So that is before the end of June. The channel map then is proposed for either Q2 or Q3. I think we can assume Q3 or later for that. And also mid-term, the Mariana Islands World War II map. So we're probably looking at 1 to 2 years before we have our hands on that. although midterm may take less than 9 months, according to Kate's definition description. I think might be delivered in less than 9 months really means 1 to 2 years. There are a number of packages or items which are directly relevant for World War II, which are in passive development, so we can't really expect to see those at all very soon. This is the airfield ATC, terrain, lighting and improvement, the clouds, which is about to kick off again apparently in May, the overall weather updates, and of course the beloved mosquito. Now let's get on with all the chunky stuff in the video. We'll start looking at the updates to the World War II Assets pack. First of all is the newly released Ju-88, the twin-engined Luftwaffe bomber. This aircraft is currently only equipped with torpedoes as its air-to-surface weapon set, and there's no real indication that this aircraft is going to be armed with bombs. However, I think it ought to be given at least one standard dumb bomb type. The aircraft can be set up to attack ships in the mission editor, and the aircraft actually do a pretty reasonable job of lining up on ships and loosing their torpedoes. The next aircraft which was added to the assets pack for AI was the A-20, which is the Allied twin-engined medium bomber. This aircraft is pretty quick and is armed with a modest load of bombs. It comes with a number of skins for the Allied air forces of the time. A number of ground units were also added to the assets pack during the month of April. Here's a little drive-by of a few of them, and if you're interested in looking at these in more detail, Suntsag put together a nice video showcasing these, also showcasing these vehicles being used in combined arms in the first-person player view. I'll link to his video in the description to this one. A static V1 model was also added to the assets pack in April. This can be used to look like the V1 sights, although at this point in time it does not yet actually fire the V1s. The implementation of V1s being launched and flying will be expected at a later date. Let's talk about ships, baby, and we finally have a couple of Kriegsmarine vessels, the Schnellboot and a small U-boat model. These will float around on the surface of the water and engage with their surface guns if enemy aircraft are spotted. The U-boat at this point does not submerge and it does not operate at periscope depth. It stays on the surface. Here are the models and a bit of footage of them floating around. Now to a rather impressive visual addition to the assets pack. That is the addition of the German searchlight unit. This is a light which can be added to the missions and then turned on and off via a series of triggers in the mission editor. It's a little bit cumbersome to use at this point, and the light has a relatively limited range of about 7,500 feet, and it seems to pick up aircraft at about that distance as well, and then the light will try to train onto them until the aircraft moves out of their range. There are one or two little bugs with this unit still, but it certainly creates some impressive visual effects, which we can now look at over Carentan. Just as I bring the video to a close, I wanted to mention one or two of the bugs that appear to have crept in with the WW2 Assets update. The first is possibly the most frustrating, and that is that the A20 appears to have been coded as a fighter insofar as it reacts to other aircraft. In this little test mission here, I've got a section of 4 B-17s and a section of 4 A-20s. They both have the same instructions to carry out some bombing, and they are supposed to act passively to any aerial threats. You can see when a pair of 190s shows up, the B-17s make a small vertical evasive maneuver in order to avoid a head-on collision, and then they carry on in their formation towards the target. The A-20s unfortunately start an aggressive turn and then begin a series of aggressive maneuvers to try and shoot down the fighter aircraft. This obviously makes deploying the A-20s as a level bomber or a tactical bomber rather difficult at the moment. The second is just a short note that the searchlights are currently not yet showing for clients in the multiplayer environment. I've posted a bug report on the ED forums about this, so hopefully these things will be addressed soon. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Thanks for watching everyone. As usual, happy hunting. I'll see you up there.